Hi guys. So I've decided to do a bit of a personal video today, and I thought I'd talk about it because what I'm about to talk about is massively misunderstood. And I know, I have a really small audience, but I hope that this small audience can kind of get a glimpse on what I'm about to talk about is like, and maybe some of the stigma can be taken away. So, as you know, I make promises, I announce things, and then I come and go. I disappear. This is because I have a mental illness called OCD. I've talked about OCD in the past. I have been open and honest about my struggles with it, but not to this level, not to this extent. So I'm going to get into it today. So OCD stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. Now, you probably know OCD as wanting to be clean and neat and organized. I don't fault you for that. Most people think that that's what OCD is. Before I realized that I had it, that's what I thought too. So when the idea of me having OCD came up in conversation in my personal life, I was like, no way, because that's not what OCD is. I was very wrong. So I developed OCD later on in life. I didn't have it as a child. I developed it when I was 17. I started to have intrusive thoughts about terrible, terrible things. And I started to think that those intrusive thoughts meant something about me. And here come the compulsions, the C of OCD. The compulsions were researching and ruminating and asking people and confessing my thoughts. Those were the main 4 compulsions that I had. I'm not going to go into what these thoughts were because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. OCD is OCD. But these were thoughts that I did not want, that I did not choose, and would come into my head on autopilot. And I would respond to these thoughts by spending 12 hours a day on sites like Reddit and Quora and Google, trying to figure out if these thoughts meant something about me. It was a very traumatic time in my life, because my OCD genuinely had me convinced that I was a monster. Now, if you don't know anything about OCD, and you're freaked out right now, I get it. What are intrusive thoughts, you might ask? Well, you might not know it, but you have intrusive thoughts too. Everyone has intrusive thoughts. Everyone in the world has had a weird thought at some time in their life, and that is called an intrusive thought. A thought that you did not ask for, a thought that you think is weird, and a thought that you never think about again. However, when it comes to people with OCD, that thought goes on loop because they have that one weird thought and then they get more of them because their brain starts to think of it as important. So that one weird thought that you had at age 20 that you probably don't think about anymore and never came back, now comes back on loop and comes back in different variants and different forms because you have taught your brain that this is an important thought. It can go so far as to create new thoughts on the same topic. Again, these are thoughts that you do not ask for and that you hyperfixate on, not in an autistic or ADHD way, but in an OCD way. At this point, you're not well. And everyone else around you can see that these are just thoughts and that they don't mean anything about you. But you can't, because you are officially in the mental illness club. Part of the reason why I disappear a lot of the time is because I get caught up in these thoughts. People with OCD often become convinced that the thoughts make them a monster, so they're reluctant to go to therapy or to a doctor, and they're reluctant to get any sort of help, and they suffer. Just like I do. And I know that I wouldn't be reluctant to get help if my type of disorder or my type of thoughts were way less stigmatized. But unfortunately, they are. Think of it like this. You've probably heard of a case where a person with OCD washes their hands until they're red and has to do it over and over and over again. This is because they also get intrusive thoughts that if they don't do that, something bad is going to happen. They're not doing it because they're perfectionists or because they want to be clean and neat. They're doing it because their brain has told them that if they don't do it, something bad is going to happen and it will all be their fault. And of course, if you don't have OCD, that sounds ridiculous. But of course, if you do have OCD, that sounds very logical because it's a disorder. It takes control of us and it makes us do things that we don't have to do. In my case, every time I had an intrusive thought, I had to go on Reddit and write about it or read about it. I had to go on OCD forums and confess the thoughts and make sure that they were okay. The thing is with OCD, the more you think something bad's gonna happen, the more it increases the feeling of certainty that it will. And that's what the compulsions are for. So when I disappear for months on end, that's what I'm struggling with. And I want you to know, because I don't hear enough people talk about this. There will never be enough people that talk about this. I want you to know that if you have OCD, if you're a viewer of mine and you've just come across this and you have OCD, I want you to know that you're not alone. You think you're alone, and I completely understand that feeling, but I promise you, you are not. You're ill, you have a disorder, and there are so many people out there just like you. I hope, if writing doesn't work out for me, or I choose to go into another career path at some point in life, I want to become an OCD specialist. Because I want to help people who've been in my position. And that's where I've been. That's where I've been, and that's why nothing ever gets made or released, because I have a disorder. I'm not well. And therapy here is scarce. It's not great. I'm not going to get into the logistics of it, but I'm trying. I'm just trying to get up every day and do whatever I need to do, but it's difficult. But I'm trying. And if you have OCD, know that you're doing the best you can. And know that I'm here with you. And I don't normally do this, but if you do have OCD and you ever want to talk, just comment below and let me know, because I get it. And I want to help people. I have OCD, and I'm trying not to let it take control of my life anymore. I've talked about OCD in the past. OCD can come with false memories, it can come with all sorts of things. Anything in the world you can think of, OCD can conjure up and mimic and make you think that it's real. And yeah, it sounds like you're crazy. But I promise you're not crazy. Like I said, if you have OCD, you're not alone. If you don't have OCD, I hope you've taken something away from this. I've explained it in, I think, the best way that I can. And I guess that explains why I've been away. I'm gonna try and pull myself together and get some stuff out there before the finale comes out, because I know you guys love to see it, and I love making it. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. This was a very hard video to make. I hope it doesn't get me scrutinized. Stay safe, always, and remember, you're not alone.